When a devoted kindergarten teacher glimpses bruises beneath the sleeve of a silent little boy's ever-present winter coat, his quiet world shatters. As the teacher dug deeper into the child's strange behavior, his hostile foster guardian, and a web of institutional neglect, he found himself hunted, silenced, and alone in a system built to look away. With the child's life hanging in the balance, he had to confront his own buried trauma to stop a cycle of abuse that could claim the boy next. This was a story of bravery, resilience, and the relentless fight for justice. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you believe the truth should always come to light, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Mr. Rowan had always started his day with the quiet routine that anchored his life. He would wake at dawn, look out his small apartment window to see if the sun was just peeking over the horizon, and think of all the children he was about to greet. On most mornings, he drank a single cup of coffee and arranged the lesson plans he had perfected the night before. The classroom walls of Willow Creek Elementary, though worn with age, still displayed bright construction paper cutouts, a rainbow of children's art, and small scribbles of hope that made him proud to be a teacher. He believed that within those walls, he could offer safety and kindness, things the outside world sometimes withheld. On that cool April morning, everything seemed to be going as it usually did, until the new student arrived. Jamie was brought in by the principal, who shot Mr. Rowan a meaningful, uncertain glance, while the boy shuffled behind, half hidden in a large, frayed blue coat. The child did not say much, merely nodded when asked if he understood classroom rules. Mr. Rowan, with years of experience in reading children's faces, noticed right away that something weighed heavily on Jamie's small shoulders. The boy's eyes flickered with fear, and his coat was zipped all the way up despite the mild weather. Yet, Mr. Rowan smiled gently, offered a soft greeting, and said, "We're so happy to have you here, Jamie. This is our classroom, and you're welcome to learn and play with us." The boy nodded but offered no words in return. The morning passed in a blur of introductions to letters of the alphabet, finger painting at round tables, and snack time featuring apple slices. Mr. Rowan observed Jamie politely nibble on the edges of his apple, but mostly stare down at the table whenever other children tried to engage him. During circle time, the boy cradled his arms around himself, always tugging at the sleeves of the coat, as though worried someone might try to remove it. A small puzzle piece of concern wedged into Mr. Rowan's thoughts, yet he decided to give Jamie space. Children often needed a day or two to adjust, especially if they had gone through multiple transitions. But that day, Jamie offered him the first glimpse of something being seriously amiss. During arts and crafts, the child's sleeve slid back just enough for Mr. Rowan to see a faint purplish mark near Jamie's wrist. The teacher's breath caught in his throat, and a sense of dread began to climb up his spine. He had seen marks like that before, shadows of handprints, finger marks pressed into tender skin. He quietly asked, "Jamie, is your arm okay?" The boy's eyes flitted up in alarm, and he quickly tugged the sleeve back over his wrist, offering a barely audible, "I'm fine." The response did not fool Mr. Rowan. It only deepened his concern. The day ended, and when Teresa Lang, the foster guardian, arrived to pick Jamie up, Mr. Rowan tried to introduce himself. He said, "I'm Mr. Rowan, Jamie's new teacher. It's wonderful to have him here." She barely looked at him, grunted in acknowledgement, and, with a disinterested wave, motioned for Jamie to follow. The boy obediently trudged behind her, keeping his head down. Mr. Rowan stood by the door, unsettled. He had met a fair share of brusque parents and guardians, but something about this woman's dismissive nature alarmed him. It was as if she wanted to keep Jamie as invisible as possible. That night, Mr. Rowan found it impossible to sleep. He tossed under the covers, remembering the bruise near Jamie's wrist. Memories of a child's quiet suffering flickered in his mind. He recalled his own younger brother, lost years ago in a failing foster care system. There had been subtle signs, just like Jamie's. Quiet fear, reluctance to speak, bruises explained away by caregivers as harmless mishaps. Yet no one had intervened in time. That painful memory lodged in Mr. Rowan's heart and refused to leave. He vowed that if Jamie needed help, he would not remain a bystander. The next morning, Mr. Rowan approached the principal about his concerns, but the response was a cautious shrug. "We can't jump to conclusions," the principal said. "You know how it goes. We can't accuse a guardian without evidence." Mr. Rowan left the office conflicted, but he could not let the matter rest. Instead, he decided to observe more carefully, noting any additional signs. He understood that a single bruise might be from an accidental bump or a child's rough-and-tumble play. Yet something about Jamie's subdued demeanor suggested deeper trouble. That day, Mr. Rowan tried to interact with Jamie during indoor recess, asking if he wanted to play with blocks or color. Jamie just shook his head and remained near the window, shoulders hunched. Mr. Rowan placed a gentle hand on the boy's upper arm, hoping to guide him toward the drawing table. Instantly, Jamie winced, as though even that light touch stung. Mr. Rowan pulled his hand away, noticing how Jamie's entire body tensed. He said, "We only want you to have fun, Jamie. No one's going to hurt you here." But the boy said nothing, and it pained Mr. Rowan to see such fear in so small a frame. Over the next week, Mr. Rowan kept a watchful eye. The pattern became all too clear. Jamie continually wore that same oversized blue coat, refusing to remove it even when the classroom grew warm. He flinched when children brushed by him, stopped speaking whenever a teacher's aide approached, and seemed exhausted, as though nightmares plagued his nights. During coloring sessions, Mr. Rowan noticed how Jamie's pictures were muted, mostly scribbles in dark shades of pencil or crayon. Sometimes, the child drew what looked like tall, shadowy figures looming over smaller shapes. A moment of truth came when a classmate accidentally bumped into Jamie during an art project. Jamie tried to steady himself, but the scissors in his hand skittered and slipped, cutting a small hole in the sleeve of his coat. Mr. Rowan hurried over to ensure the boy was not hurt. Jamie's eyes went wide, and he yanked at the sleeve, but not before Mr. Rowan saw a cluster of bruises in the shape of fingerprints. The sight made him feel physically ill. He stifled a gasp and carefully asked, "Are you all right, Jamie?" The boy quickly pulled the coat closed. "I'm okay," he whispered, his voice trembling. That night, Mr. Rowan documented everything in a small spiral notebook he kept at home. With precise detail, he wrote about each bruise, each incident, each time Jamie pulled away or showed any sign of distress. If he was going to protect this child, he needed a record of facts. The memories of his brother haunted him. He recalled how no one believed the bruise on his brother's arm was anything beyond typical childhood clumsiness, until it was too late. He would not let that tragedy repeat. He wrote, "Bruises on right wrist, possibly from gripping. Fearful of adult touch. Wears coat constantly, why?" Days turned into a week, and the tension only grew. Mr. Rowan knew he needed an ally, someone who could help him navigate these concerns without triggering the very system that had let his own brother slip through the cracks. That was when he met Detective Reese. She had come to the school under the guise of being a community liaison to speak about general safety measures for children. She was quiet, reserved, with keen eyes that seemed to take in every detail. Mr. Rowan had overheard the school secretary mention that Detective Reese is part of some special program. He decided to speak to her after her presentation to the staff. He waited until the other teachers filed out of the staff room. Then he hesitantly approached her and said, "Detective Reese, could I have a moment of your time?" She turned, nodded, and said, "Certainly. How can I help?" Mr. Rowan felt an unexpected surge of emotion, as though he was about to speak aloud a secret fear he had been carrying alone. He told her about the bruises, Jamie's demeanor, and his suspicion that the foster mother might be abusing the child. Detective Reese listened intently, her gaze never leaving his face. She said, "You're right to be concerned. We can't ignore signs like that. But we'll need more to act on than just bruises and a hunch. Otherwise the system might simply brush it off, or worse, try to discredit you. He felt a wave of relief that she took him seriously. "What can I do?" he asked. Detective Reese pressed her lips together in thought. "Keep documenting everything you see. If you can, talk to the child in a safe environment. Gently ask about his home life, how things are with his foster mother. But do it carefully. You don't want to scare him or tip off the guardian that you suspect something. I'll see what I can find out from my side. There might be more to this situation." Over the next few days, Mr. Rowan and Detective Reese exchanged quiet updates, always mindful to speak where no one else could overhear. Detective Reese shared that she had her own motivation for investigating problems in the foster care system. She said, "I grew up in it. I know firsthand that it can fail a child in the worst ways. That's why I do what I do now." The honesty in her voice made Mr. Rowan feel a deep sense of gratitude toward her. He confessed his own past. "I lost my younger brother to this. We were separated after our parents passed away, placed with different foster homes. He didn't survive his. I can't let that happen again." Determined, Mr. Rowan continued to observe Jamie with growing heartbreak. Each day, the child appeared more withdrawn, like a candle snuffed out one flicker at a time. The boy still participated in lessons but spoke as little as possible. A few times, Mr. Rowan tried to casually ask, "How's everything at home, Jamie? Do you like where you live?" And the boy's face would go pale. He muttered, "It's fine," and that was all he offered. Whenever Mr. Rowan pressed further, Jamie's eyes clouded with tears he tried desperately to hide. One rainy afternoon, Mr. Rowan found Jamie alone in the classroom after dismissal, staring out the window at the downpour. He said, "The buses are gone, Jamie. Are you waiting for someone to pick you up?" The boy looked startled, nodded, and kept his distance. Mr. Rowan sensed the boy's hesitation and tried to reassure him. "It's all right. We can wait here together until your guardian arrives." Minutes ticked by, then nearly an hour as the sky grew dark. Teresa eventually showed up, agitated. She barely acknowledged Mr. Rowan and jerked her head for Jamie to follow. He obeyed, shoulders tight, and left without a word. That evening, Mr. Rowan received a phone call from Teresa. Her tone was clipped and hostile. She said, "Stop prying into our lives or you'll regret it. Do you understand?" and hung up before he could respond. A tremor of fear coursed through him, but it was followed by a surge of indignation. How could she threaten him for caring about Jamie? He immediately documented the call, the approximate time, and her words. If she was willing to threaten him, what was she capable of doing to Jamie behind closed doors? He met Detective Reese early the next morning before classes. She looked troubled when he recounted the phone call. "We need to proceed carefully," she said. "It sounds like this guardian is on edge, and if she knows you're onto her, she might become even more dangerous for Jamie." Mr. Rowan's heart sank at the thought of the boy suffering greater harm. He whispered, "There has to be a way to intervene." Detective Reese nodded. "We'll keep gathering evidence. Paperwork, testimonies, anything that can help us get him out of that home legally and safely." By the second week of Jamie's enrollment, Mr. Rowan could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he envisioned the bruises, the trembling shoulders of that little boy. He found himself reliving the guilt he still carried for not being there for his own brother. He replayed the night he learned of his brother's passing, how helpless and angry he had felt, and how he vowed never to let another child slip through the cracks. This time, he told himself, he would act in time. Then came a turning point. Jamie arrived in class one morning, looking more exhausted than ever, with dark circles under his eyes. He flinched more than usual. During a brief reading session, Mr. Rowan noticed that Jamie's coat was not zipped all the way. The zipper was broken near the bottom, likely from stress or repeated pulling. Jamie tried to hold the coat closed with one hand. Mr. Rowan gently asked, "Is your zipper broken?" Jamie nodded, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. "Mommy says it never comes off," he whispered, echoing the same words Mr. Rowan heard on the boy's first day. Mr. Rowan offered, "Maybe we can fix it together. You must be hot in there." But Jamie shook his head vehemently and pressed the coat tighter around himself. Shortly after that interaction, the class was interrupted by a special assembly. As the children lined up to go to the auditorium, Mr. Rowan watched Jamie's pace slow, each step more reluctant. The boy stumbled at one point, and another teacher, trying to help, placed a hand on his back. Jamie yelped in pain and pulled away, tears brimming. The alarmed teacher apologized, confused by the strong reaction. Mr. Rowan's stomach churned. He suspected that the boy's back might also be bruised or injured in some way. Desperate for more conclusive proof, Mr. Rowan confided in a teacher's aide named Clara. She was a caring, observant woman in her 40s who had worked at Willow Creek Elementary for many years. Mr. Rowan said, "Clara, I need your help. I think Jamie is in serious trouble at home." Clara's face grew grave and she replied, "I've noticed something about that coat. He acts like it's the only thing keeping him safe." Mr. Rowan nodded. "He won't let anyone take it off. The bruises I've seen, they're not random." Clara said softly, "I'll watch him carefully. If I see anything else, I'll document it. The more voices we have, the harder it'll be for the administration or child services to ignore." Over the next week, tension enveloped Mr. Rowan's every waking moment. He scarcely managed to complete his usual teaching duties without feeling a knot in his stomach. Every time Jamie shrank back from a classmate, or flinched at a simple gesture, Mr. Rowan's resolve hardened. He collected scraps of evidence. Drawings that depicted what looked like large figures overshadowing small children, occasional small bruises on Jamie's arms when the coat slid. Whenever possible, he quietly coaxed the boy to open up, but Jamie seldom spoke more than a whisper. One day, though, Jamie let slip a fragment of his reality. He said, "She said I'm bad. That's why it happens." It broke Mr. Rowan's heart. He replied gently, "No, Jamie. You're not bad." But Jamie only swallowed his tears and stared at the floor. In the midst of these observations, the normal routines of the school continued. Other children laughed, played, and learned. They brought bright, chaotic energy into the classroom that occasionally masked Jamie's sadness in the crowd of small voices. Mr. Rowan fought the urge to single Jamie out too overtly. He knew that if Teresa sensed the increasing scrutiny, she might withdraw Jamie from the school, just as parents in questionable situations sometimes did when prying eyes got too close. He had to balance compassion with caution. It pained him to pretend everything was normal. While Mr. Rowan gathered his notes, Detective Reese was busy behind the scenes. She spoke with social workers, trying to find out if there had been any prior reports on Teresa Lang's household. She discovered that Teresa had fostered multiple children over the years, some with short placements and quick turnovers. A pattern emerged. The children often left her care abruptly, sometimes with official reasons, sometimes with none. However, the records were either inconclusive or missing. Reese also found references to certain caseworkers who seemed to rubber-stamp Teresa's environment as suitable, despite minor complaints. She suspected corruption or at least negligence in the protective services that oversaw foster placement. Detective Reese confided her frustrations to Mr. Rowan one afternoon. They stood outside the school under a gray sky, raindrops pattering on the sidewalk. She said, "I can't get a straight story out of these people. It's like they're reluctant to dig too deeply. I suspect Teresa has connections, or maybe there's a larger problem in the system. Either way, the more I press, the more pushback I get." Mr. Rowan shook his head in disbelief. "This is exactly how my brother slipped through," he murmured. "They pass the buck, no one wants to take responsibility. Then the child is lost in the shuffle." Amid these mounting worries, Mr. Rowan's personal life began to unravel. He found it hard to eat or sleep, often losing track of time as he pored over his notes late into the night. Some nights, he woke from nightmares, drenched in sweat, recalling the night he learned his brother was gone. He would lie in bed, heart pounding, silently weeping for the brother he could not save, and for Jamie, who still might be saved if he acted in time. The stress bore down on him, yet he tried to maintain his composure at work. His co-workers noticed that the ever-patient, kind Mr. Rowan appeared more strained than usual, but few knew the full depth of his inner turmoil. The only relief came from brief conversations with Detective Reese and supportive glances from Clara. They formed a quiet trio of watchers, determined not to let the system bury Jamie's case under bureaucratic indifference. One afternoon, after a particularly worrying episode where Jamie arrived limping slightly, Detective Reese admitted, "I'm looking for any slip Teresa might make, something undeniable we can use. But it's slow going. We can't just storm in without due process." As the days passed, the tension escalated in subtle but ominous ways. Mr. Rowan noticed that Teresa sometimes came into the classroom earlier than necessary, as though checking to see what was being said or done. On one occasion, she confronted Clara in the hallway. Though Clara never revealed the full details of that encounter, she returned to Mr. Rowan pale-faced and tight-lipped. "She's definitely suspicious of us," Clara said. "We have to be careful." The undercurrent of hostility grew, and it felt like thick smog no one could breathe. Despite the warnings, Mr. Rowan could not stop himself from trying to reach out to Jamie, especially after the boy's limp. He found Jamie alone in the reading corner and quietly asked, "Jamie, are you hurt anywhere else?" The child looked up, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'm just tired," he muttered. Mr. Rowan gently said, "If someone is hurting you, you can tell me. You're not going to get in trouble. I only want to help." Jamie's lower lip trembled. "She said no one can help me. She said if I talk, they'll take me away, and I'll be homeless." Mr. Rowan's eyes filled with tears at hearing those words. He said, "Jamie, that's not true. You deserve to be safe." By the third week, a sense of impending disaster hung in the air. Mr. Rowan's worst fears began to crystallize. The system that should protect Jamie was riddled with cracks, Detective Reese was battling unseen forces of corruption, and the boy's guardian clearly intended to isolate and intimidate him into silence. One afternoon, Mr. Rowan overheard Teresa telling the office staff that she was considering homeschooling Jamie, that this environment isn't good for him. Alarmed, Mr. Rowan quickly told Detective Reese, "We have to act soon. If she pulls him out, we may lose track of him entirely." Detective Reese agreed. "I'm trying to fast-track a protective order," she said in a low voice. "But the judge I spoke to wants more than just bruises and hearsay. He wants incontrovertible proof." Frantic, Mr. Rowan asked, "Can't we have someone come in to interview the child at school? Could we do it covertly so Teresa doesn't know?" Detective Reese frowned. "We can try. But if word gets back to the wrong people, we lose the element of surprise. Teresa might bolt." Mr. Rowan swallowed. "We can't let that happen." Each day felt like a race against time, each moment laced with the dread that Teresa could vanish with Jamie at any second. Mr. Rowan and Detective Reese did everything in their power to protect the boy, but the obstacles multiplied. The principal, cautious about legal exposure, advised Mr. Rowan to tread lightly to avoid any liability issues for the school. Social services gave polite but hollow responses, citing policies and procedures. Meanwhile, rumors circulated about shady dealings within child protective services, people receiving financial incentives, turning a blind eye to suspicious cases. The handful of times Mr. Rowan pressed for more thorough investigations, he was met with stony resistance or vague reassurances that the matter is under review. In the midst of this, Detective Reese revealed a bombshell from her own research. She had uncovered partial evidence that Teresa's foster care licenses had been renewed under questionable circumstances by a specific caseworker known for rubber stamping. That caseworker had ties to certain administrators in the district who were rumored to be involved in funneling funds meant for child welfare into personal projects. It was a tangled web, but it pointed to a larger system of neglect, if not outright corruption. When Detective Reese tried to push further, higher-ups told her to back off. She confided in Mr. Rowan, "I'm hitting walls everywhere. My own department is telling me to drop it, that it's not my jurisdiction. But I can't. This is bigger than I thought." One afternoon, Mr. Rowan found a note slipped under his classroom door. It read, "Stop what you're doing. You're making trouble." His blood ran cold. Was it from Teresa? Or someone in the system who did not want him digging deeper? He showed it to Detective Reese. She pursed her lips and said, "We're getting close to something. People who profit from this system don't want exposure." Mr. Rowan shook his head in disbelief, anger surging through him. "And there's a frightened 5-year-old trapped in the middle," he said. "This is monstrous." He tried to concentrate on teaching, to maintain a sense of normalcy for the other children, but his thoughts were a constant swirl of dread. He kept a protective watch over Jamie, offering small smiles whenever the boy met his gaze, letting him know someone cared. On the surface, lessons continued. Counting games, alphabet songs, story time with picture book. But behind every repeated verse of a nursery rhyme, Mr. Rowan's mind raced with the question, "Where is the tipping point where we can finally rescue him?" Came unexpectedly on a Friday afternoon. Jamie did not show up for class. Concern spiked through Mr. Rowan. He asked the school secretary if there had been any call or note explaining the absence. She shook her head. "No, nothing. Maybe he's just sick." But Mr. Rowan had a gnawing feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. Detective Reese arrived at the school that day with grim news. "I heard from a neighbor of Teresa's. She saw them packing up things late last night. Said it looked like they were leaving in a hurry." Mr. Rowan's heart lurched. "We have to find them," he said, an urgency in his voice that betrayed his mounting panic. That same day, Detective Reese revealed that local authorities had some surveillance images from an old gas station out near the highway. It showed Teresa's car, and there was a small figure with her wearing a blue coat. "It's definitely them," Detective Reese confirmed. "They're on the move, but we're not sure where they're headed." Mr. Rowan felt an almost overwhelming sense of dread. "We have to do something," he repeated, voice shaking. "Every hour we wait puts Jamie in more danger." Together, Mr. Rowan and Detective Reese scrambled to get official resources involved. A handful of officers who trusted Reese agreed to keep an eye out for Teresa's vehicle. But the response from the system was depressingly slow. Official memos had to be filed, interdepartmental clearance needed to be obtained, and so on. Mr. Rowan felt each second slip through his fingers like sand. He confided in Clara, who whispered, "They'll find him. They have to." He could only nod, tears gathering in his eyes. Meanwhile, Detective Reese followed a hunch. She had discovered references to a piece of property that once belonged to Teresa's relatives, a dilapidated place in the remote woods, seldom used and far off the main roads. It was rumored to be a spot where Teresa's extended family gathered for reasons that were never entirely clear. Some whispered that they engaged in questionable activities or harbored secret. Regardless of the truth, it was a lead. Without full departmental support, Reese took it upon herself to go searching that area. Mr. Rowan insisted on helping. She tried to dissuade him, saying, "This could be dangerous." But he refused to stand aside, responding, "I won't rest until we get Jamie back safely." They drove out of the city in a borrowed, unmarked vehicle with 2 trusted officers. The winding roads turned narrower as they ventured deeper into the forested outskirts. The sky was dark with heavy clouds, and the air felt thick with impending rain. Mr. Rowan's hands trembled on his lap, and Detective Reese stole quick glances at him. She said, "We'll find him. Keep the faith." He nodded, heart pounding. Though part of him feared the worst, he clung to the hope that they would reach the child in time. Just as night fell, they spotted a faint light between the dense trees, where an old shack stood in disrepair. Detective Reese asked the two accompanying officers to circle around quietly and see if there was any sign of activity. Mr. Rowan stayed in the car at first, nerves on edge. The minutes felt like hours. Finally, one of the officers returned, speaking in hushed tones. "We saw a woman who matches Teresa's description. She seemed agitated, pacing outside. Couldn't see a child yet." At that point, Mr. Rowan insisted on going closer. Detective Reese, though reluctant, nodded. "Stay behind me," she warned. "And remember, no rash moves. We need to ensure Jamie's safety first." They crept through the underbrush, hearts pounding. Dim lantern light from the shack windows cast long shadows across the ground. Suddenly, Teresa bolted from around the corner of the shack, trying to make a run for the trees. One officer shouted, "Stop!" but she ignored him, stumbling over roots. Detective Reese tackled her gently, restraining her as she yelled incoherently. Her shouts echoed through the trees. "I had to protect him. You don't understand." Her eyes were wild, darting around as though she expected someone else to appear. "Where is Jamie?" Mr. Rowan cried, stepping forward. Teresa's face twisted with rage and desperation. "You can't have him. I was keeping him safe," she shrieked. The officer took her aside, but Mr. Rowan didn't wait. He ran into the shack, ignoring Detective Reese's calls to be cautious. The interior smelled of damp wood and neglect, a single lantern casting flickering light against rotted walls. At first, he saw no one, just piles of discarded blankets and old furniture. He called out in a trembling voice, "Jamie? Jamie, it's Mr. Rowan. Where are you?" A soft, muffled sob emerged from the corner. Mr. Rowan rushed over, heart hammering in his chest. There, huddled behind a broken chair, was Jamie. The boy's coat was even more tattered than before, new bruises apparent on his arms and possibly elsewhere. He looked up, eyes wide with terror. Mr. Rowan knelt slowly, extending his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "Jamie," he whispered, voice choking with emotion, "it's me. You're safe now. I promise." Jamie's lip quivered, and he reached out, clutching the fabric of Mr. Rowan's jacket as though it were a lifeline. Outside, Teresa's voice kept echoing, insisting she was protecting the boy from something worse. Mr. Rowan did not know what that meant. All that mattered now was Jamie's safety. Detective Reese appeared at the shack door with a flashlight, scanning the interior. She sighed in relief when she saw Mr. Rowan cradling Jamie, who began to sob uncontrollably, burying his face against Mr. Rowan's chest. The detective carefully approached and said, "Let's get him out of here." Mr. Rowan nodded, tears streaking his own cheeks, overcome by relief and worry. In the aftermath, Teresa was arrested for child endangerment, kidnapping, and suspected involvement in a network of corruption. Jamie was rushed to a hospital for immediate care. The doctors found multiple bruises, signs of both old and new injuries, though fortunately none were life-threatening. Jamie was severely traumatized, though, and hardly spoke to anyone except Mr. Rowan. For Mr. Rowan, the sight of Jamie lying in a hospital bed, so small and fragile, tugged at wounds in his own heart. He vowed to ensure that the boy would not slip back into the jaws of a broken system. Meanwhile, Detective Reese battled the bureaucracy that tried to minimize or hush the details of Teresa's case. She worked closely with a few upright officials who believed in justice, and they uncovered further evidence that Teresa had not acted alone. Paper trails revealed suspicious payments to certain caseworkers, forging or misfiling documentation. It became clear that the entire system needed an overhaul, but first they had to ensure Jamie's immediate safety. Mr. Rowan, finally exhausted and beaten down by fear and hope, did what he had never done before. He decided to apply for custody of the child. It was a daunting process. Social services balked at the idea at first, pointing out that Mr. Rowan was single, lived in a modest apartment, and had never fostered a child before. But he had references from the school, from the parents of children he had taught, from Detective Reese, and from Clara, all attesting to his unyielding commitment and compassionate heart. In meeting after meeting, he relayed the story of his own childhood and the pain of losing his brother. He explained how he had been quietly saving money and planning to move into a slightly larger place. He declared his willingness to undergo any training or orientation necessary to become a licensed foster parent or adoptive parent. Still, obstacles arose. Certain officials tried to block or delay. Hidden players within the corrupt corners of the system seemed determined to keep the real problems from seeing the light of day. Mr. Rowan faced intimidation. Anonymous calls, letters suggesting he drop the matter, even rumors that his teaching credentials might be reviewed. But each time he felt overwhelmed, he remembered Jamie's frightened eyes and the vow he had made. Through it all, Detective Reese stood by him, providing moral and official support. She gathered additional testimony from doctors who examined Jamie, who confirmed that the bruises were consistent with repeated abuse, not mere accidental bumps as some might claim. Clara likewise offered a written account of everything she had observed about Jamie's behavior. Parents of other students, who admired Mr. Rowan's devotion, wrote letters praising his character and urging the system to let him protect the boy. Eventually, after months of legal back and forth, a hearing was scheduled. Standing in that courthouse, Mr. Rowan felt the weight of everything resting on the judge's decision. He wore his best suit, though it was well-worn and slightly outdated. Detective Reese sat behind him, a reassuring presence. Jamie was brought in by a child advocate, looking small and nervous in a collared shirt. He hurried to Mr. Rowan, clung to his hand, and whispered, "Please don't let me go." The words brought tears to Mr. Rowan's eyes. He whispered back, "I won't, Jamie. Not ever." During the hearing, Mr. Rowan gave a heartfelt testimony. He spoke in detail about the day Jamie arrived at school, the bruises he had noticed, the encounters with Teresa, and how the child's behavior reflected deep fear. He also revealed his own painful past, losing his younger brother in a similar system, which fueled his determination not to let the same fate befall Jamie. The judge listened quietly, occasionally scribbling notes. Next came Detective Reese's testimony, presenting evidence of corruption within the Child Protective Services network. She highlighted how repeated warnings about Teresa had been ignored or covered up, and how Teresa's sudden flight with Jamie suggested she knew official scrutiny was tightening. She also underscored that Mr. Rowan had saved Jamie's life by persisting in the face of intimidation and legal roadblock. The final part of the hearing allowed the Social Services Department to present their evaluation of Mr. Rowan's suitability as a guardian. Although some concerns were raised, his single status, his modest income, they could not deny the overwhelming evidence of his genuine care and dedication. The child advocate also shared that, during interviews, Jamie consistently voiced a desire to stay with Mr. Rowan, calling him the teacher who saved me. At the end of the grueling day, the judge excused himself to deliberate. Mr. Rowan waited in a tension-filled corridor, Jamie clinging to his side. After what felt like an eternity, they were called back in. The judge began by stating that the system had failed Jamie, acknowledging that corruption and negligence contributed to his continued placement in harm's way. Then he turned to Mr. Rowan and said, "Despite certain unconventional aspects of your situation, I find that the best interest of the child lies in your guardianship. I hereby grant you temporary custody, with a pathway to full adoption pending standard requirements." Tears of relief slipped down Mr. Rowan's cheek. Jamie sniffled, a watery smile forming as he wrapped his arms around Mr. Rowan's waist. Outside the courtroom, Detective Reese congratulated them, a soft smile breaking her usual composure. "You did it," she said, clasping Mr. Rowan's shoulder. He looked at Jamie, who stared up with wide, hopeful eyes. "No, we did it," he corrected, hugging them both. Yet his voice wavered, betraying a mixture of triumph and the lingering sadness of memories that would never fade. The next days and weeks brought a whirlwind of changes. Mr. Rowan moved to a slightly bigger rental with an extra bedroom, transforming the space into a warm, welcoming home for Jamie. The first night Jamie slept there, he still wore his blue coat over his pajamas. Mr. Rowan said gently, "You know, you can take that off if you want. No one here will hurt you." Jamie, eyes filling with tears, cautiously removed the coat and placed it on a chair. It was a small gesture, but it signified a huge step in the child's healing process. Though the immediate crisis had passed, the emotional aftermath ran deep. Jamie woke up crying from nightmares, sometimes needing Mr. Rowan's reassurance that he was safe. The teacher used all his patience and love to comfort Jamie, staying by his side until the boy fell back asleep. Counseling sessions helped, slowly. In time, Jamie showed flashes of the spirited child he might have been under gentler circumstances, smiling shyly when Mr. Rowan cracked a silly joke, raising his hand in class to answer questions instead of shying away. Outside their small, hard-earned sanctuary, bigger battles continued. Detective Reese and a few principled allies within the system pressed charges against the caseworker who had repeatedly green-lighted Teresa's foster license. Internal audits began exposing a deeper web of bribery and negligence. Public pressure grew once local media got wind of the case, featuring Mr. Rowan and Detective Reese's story as an emblem of how the foster care system could fail children if no one was vigilant. It took months, even years, but a wave of reforms was slowly set in motion. Higher-ups could no longer pretend everything was fine. As time rolled on, the final hearing on adopting Jamie approached. The boy had grown more confident, doing better in school, though he still had moments of fear and flashbacks. Mr. Rowan did his best to help Jamie see that the world was not purely hostile, though he understood that such wounds healed slowly. On the day the adoption was finalized, they returned to the same courthouse. Jamie dressed in a neat little button-down shirt, and Mr. Rowan wore his usual suit. The judge recognized them and smiled as he declared Jamie Rowan a permanent member of Mr. Rowan's family. At that, Jamie looked up with glistening eyes and asked, "Can I really stay with you forever?" Mr. Rowan, voice thick with emotion, replied, "Yes, forever." The resolution of their personal battle brought them a new chapter of quiet, day-to-day life. Jamie settled into a routine where love and safety were not luxuries but norms. Mr. Rowan continued teaching at Willow Creek Elementary, though now he had a deeper and more personal understanding of what it meant to protect a child. Detective Reese checked in periodically, updating them on the ongoing investigations into corruption. Teresa faced multiple charges, including child abuse, kidnapping, and conspiracy to evade child protective oversight. She ended up sentenced to prison, but to the end, she insisted she had been protecting Jamie from some unnamed evil. Mr. Rowan never fully understood her reasoning, but he knew one thing. No matter her justifications, she had hurt Jamie, and she had to face the consequences. Years passed, and Jamie grew into a bright, compassionate young man. Inspired by Mr. Rowan's influence, he decided he too wanted to be a teacher, to help children who felt alone or misunderstood. He and Mr. Rowan often visited local organizations dedicated to foster care reform, sometimes telling their story to groups of prospective foster parents or to social workers in training. Jamie's words carried a special weight. He would say, "We can't give up on kids just because it's hard. I know what it's like when the system doesn't care. But I also know what it's like when one person does." Slowly but unmistakably, their story reverberated beyond their immediate community. Lawmakers took notice, proposing new measures that required stricter oversight of foster placements and more thorough background checks for prospective guardians. Teacher training programs began incorporating child protection awareness modules, emphasizing the critical role educators play in identifying abuse signs. The spark that started with Mr. Rowan's unwavering commitment to Jamie ignited lasting change, proving that sometimes it only takes one person's courage to transform countless lives. In quiet moments, Mr. Rowan would stand on the porch of their home, watching Jamie read on the living room couch or listening to him practice lines for a school play. He would recall the first day the boy walked into his classroom, shoulders hunched, face turned away in fear. The transformation was profound and miraculous, and each time Mr. Rowan felt a mixture of pride, gratitude, and lingering sorrow for all the children who had not been saved in time, including his own brother. Yet that sorrow drove him to be a better teacher, father, and advocate, channeling pain into empathy and action. On the day of Jamie's high school graduation, Mr. Rowan beamed from the audience. Jamie, a lean teenager with determination shining in his eyes, walked across the stage. Underneath his formal attire, he wore a small pin shaped like a coat, his symbolic nod to the battered blue coat that once defined his fear. Now it was just a memory, a symbol of how far he had come. Afterward, Jamie hugged Mr. Rowan tightly, tears of joy in both their eyes. "You made this possible," Jamie said. Mr. Rowan shook his head gently. "We did this together." Later, Jamie applied to a local university's teacher education program. He wrote an essay about his experiences, describing how a devoted kindergarten teacher changed his life by refusing to look away when he saw bruises on a child. He ended the essay with these words: "No child should have to wear a coat to hide the pain inflicted on them by those who claim to protect them. We have a responsibility to see what's hidden and speak for those who cannot speak for themselves." His words resonated with the admissions committee, who admitted him with scholarships and a personal note commending his courage. Mr. Rowan and Jamie's story became a beacon of hope. Through media features and local word of mouth, many families realized that teachers could be the first line of defense for vulnerable children. Workshops sprouted up, training educators to recognize subtle signs of abuse and encouraging them to document concerns meticulously. Social workers, renewed in their resolve, pressed for deeper investigations instead of accepting superficial explanations. Bit by bit, the system saw reform, like cracks being mended in a once crumbling foundation. Throughout it all, Mr. Rowan continued his gentle, unwavering presence at Willow Creek Elementary, still guiding small children through finger painting and alphabet songs. But he carried a new sense of triumph in his heart. Each time he saw a child with so much as a scratch or a fleeting look of fear, he made certain to follow up, to ask questions, to offer support if needed. He no longer doubted the difference one caring adult could make. Meanwhile, Detective Reese progressed in her own career, eventually starting a specialized task force dedicated to uncovering corruption in protective services. She remained close to Mr. Rowan and Jamie, inviting them to speak at training sessions or ceremonies. At one such event, Detective Reese publicly thanked Mr. Rowan for having the courage to keep pushing when many would have given up. Mr. Rowan smiled and replied, "You gave me the strength to keep going. And we did it for the children." On the 10th anniversary of the day Mr. Rowan first discovered the bruises on Jamie's arm, they paid a visit to Willow Creek Elementary together. Jamie, now a fully certified teacher, walked the halls with a sense of nostalgia. The walls had been repainted, new decorations hung, and technology had advanced, but the spirit of caring remained. A teacher recognized Mr. Rowan and asked Jamie, "You must be proud to have a father who's done so much for children." Jamie smiled, eyes shining. "More than proud," he replied, and Mr. Rowan felt his chest tighten with emotion, recalling the frightened little boy in the tattered blue coat. Later that day, Jamie started teaching his own group of young students at another elementary school in the district. He made sure to greet each child by name, encouraging them to be themselves and promising them that no concern was too small to share. Sometimes, in quieter moments, he would see a child with downcast eyes, a bruise that might have a benign explanation, or might not. Each time, Jamie remembered how it felt to be that child, and he approached them with gentle words and genuine empathy, just like Mr. Rowan had done for him. In those moments, Jamie was both teacher and survivor, living proof that vigilance and compassion could rescue a child from the darkest corners. That was the legacy Mr. Rowan and Jamie built, a testament that love and determination could transcend corruption, silence, and fear. Long after the case was closed and Teresa was forgotten by most, Their story lived on in whispered accolades among teachers, in the newly fortified checks and balances in the foster care system, and in the hearts of families who saw hope in their journey. Mr. Rowan knew he would never fully erase the scars from Jamie's past, nor would he erase the scar of losing his own brother, but together they transformed pain into resolve, sorrow into activism, and solitude into a shared bond of father and son. By the time Jamie had become an established teacher himself, he never forgot the feeling of that blue coat zipped tightly against his body. He used the memory of it as motivation to be the kind of teacher who noticed the small details, a child who winced unexpectedly, an unexplained absence, or fearful glances at the mention of going home. He collaborated with child advocates and even built a small community outreach program at his school, ensuring that students in difficult home situations had a safe place to speak up. Sometimes parents or guardians would complain, but Jamie stood firm. He would say, "I know how important it is to be heard when you feel trapped. We have to give these kids a voice, or they might never be found." Mr. Rowan watched all this with immense pride. He often recalled that moment at the courthouse when Jamie asked if he could stay forever, the tears in the boy's eyes, and the promise Mr. Rowan offered. Now, seeing Jamie live a productive, purposeful life filled him with both gratitude and a lingering ache for the brother he lost. Yet, he took solace in believing that his brother's memory guided him to save Jamie, thereby honoring him by protecting another vulnerable soul. In every holiday gathering, whether it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, Mr. Rowan and Jamie would share quiet reflections about the past. They never forgot Detective Reese, who joined them occasionally, regaling them with new tales of progress in her task force. She mentioned once that the case of Teresa Lang served as a turning point for major reforms. "We still have a long way to go," she said, "but at least now more people are paying attention." As the years flowed into decades, Mr. Rowan retired from teaching, satisfied that he had given everything to his students. Jamie continued in his footsteps, blending the old methods of compassion and personal connection with modern teaching practices. Together, they championed teacher training that emphasized child welfare awareness. They visited colleges to speak to future teachers about the importance of speaking up, trusting one's instincts, and remembering that behind every bruise might be a story that demands attention. Their journey, once marked by fear and oppression, now glowed as a beacon to others. Students who heard Jamie speak sometimes approached him with tears in their eyes, sharing their own experiences of abuse or neglect, grateful that someone understood. In this way, the cycle of silent suffering was broken for many, and each confession validated the battles Mr. Rowan and Jamie fought so many years ago. When Mr. Rowan finally grew too old to walk the halls of Willow Creek Elementary, he handed the torch fully to Jamie, who had become a deeply respected teacher. On the day of Mr. Rowan's retirement ceremony, the auditorium was filled with past and present students, staff, and community members. Detective Reese attended as well, though she tried to slip in quietly at the back. Someone recognized her, and soon the entire crowd urged her to come forward. The atmosphere crackled with emotion when she joined Mr. Rowan and Jamie on stage. Clara was there too, teary-eyed as she recalled the day Mr. Rowan first told her about his concerns for Jamie. She whispered to him, "See how far we've come?" On that stage, Mr. Rowan took a trembling breath and said to the gathered audience, "Never underestimate the power of a teacher's eyes and ears. Never underestimate the difference you can make by refusing to ignore a child's pain." If I had looked away, Jamie would have slipped through the cracks. Instead, we stand here today as a testament to the fact that one person's courage, multiplied by the support of others, can change a life, can change a system, and can change our future. Jamie took the microphone next, scanning the faces of younger teachers just starting their careers. "I wore a coat once," he began, voice trembling with old memories. "I wore it so no one could see my bruises or my fear. But one teacher did see. And he refused to pretend everything was fine. That's all it took, a single adult who was willing to go the distance." Because of him, I stand here now, telling you that sometimes, you might be the only person who can save a child. So do it. It's worth the sleepless nights, the battles with an imperfect system. Because every child deserves hope. A thunderous standing ovation followed, and Mr. Rowan placed a hand on Jamie's shoulder, tears in his eyes. Detective Reese nodded quietly, wiping away a few tears of her own. She understood that, while they might have toppled one corrupt ring, the work continued and new battles lay ahead. But for the moment, they allowed themselves to feel the triumph of a hard-won victory. They had changed one small corner of the world, and for Jamie, that change meant everything. Outside, after the ceremony, a few parents approached Mr. Rowan with their children in tow. One little girl clutched a stuffed rabbit, looking shyly at Jamie. Her mother smiled and said, "We heard your story. Thank you for everything you both have done." Jamie kneeled so he was at eye level with the girl, offering her a small, warm smile. "Remember," he said softly, "if you're ever scared or something is wrong, you can tell your teacher. They'll listen, just like Mr. Rowan listened to me." The girl nodded, hugging her stuffed rabbit tighter. Her mother's eyes glistened with gratitude, and they walked away with hearts a little lighter. That night, Mr. Rowan and Jamie sat together in the living room, sorting through keepsakes and old photographs. They found pictures from the earliest days of Jamie's new life. Hospital photos, adoption day snapshots, birthdays, holidays, and the proud moment Jamie graduated from high school. Each image told a piece of their journey. Jamie lingered on one picture of him clinging to Mr. Rowan's arm in the hospital, the night he was rescued. He said, voice soft, "I don't know if I ever thanked you enough. You risked everything, your job, your safety, to save me." Mr. Rowan smiled gently, though tears rimmed his eyes again. "You've thanked me every day since, Jamie. Just by living your life with so much compassion and courage. That's all the thanks I could ever need." They embraced, father and son, bound not by blood, but by a decision to fight for each other when no one else would. Over time, their personal crusade expanded into broader advocacy. Jamie developed a curriculum to help teachers identify signs of abuse in young children, collaborating with child psychologists and social workers. He visited other states, sometimes other countries, speaking at conferences. Each time, he recounted how a quiet teacher named Mr. Rowan once found bruises on a frightened 5-year-old boy and refused to look away. "If he had ignored me," Jamie told audiences, "I might not be alive today." Even as life moved on, they never forgot the darkness they had faced. Sometimes they spoke of Teresa. Jamie admitted that he felt pity for her, for whatever twisted logic made her believe she was protecting him by hurting him. Mr. Rowan listened, acknowledging the complexity of the trauma. "We can't fully understand what demons drove her," he would say. "But we do know that she made her choices, and they were wrong. None of it was your fault." This reaffirmation helped Jamie continue his healing, and it renewed his empathy for children trapped in painful circumstances. In the quiet final quarter of their story, father and son found fulfillment and peace, yet never let complacency overshadow the lingering responsibility they felt. By now, Jamie had a family of his own, a supportive spouse who admired his dedication, and eventually, children who called Mr. Rowan their grandfather. Watching them play in the backyard, Mr. Rowan remembered the fear that once held Jamie in its grip. Seeing the next generation safe, joyous, and carefree brought him a serenity he once thought impossible. Though the system remained imperfect, Mr. Rowan and Detective Reese's efforts, paired with countless others, did spark meaningful reforms. The old networks of corruption weakened under the spotlight, new watchdog groups formed, and whistleblower protections became stronger. In every training session, Jamie invoked the memory of that battered blue coat, reminding new teachers of the invisible burdens some students carried. It became a lasting symbol, a vow never to allow a child to suffer in silence. And so, through heartbreak and healing, through danger and determination, Mr. Rowan and Jamie's story concluded with a legacy of hope. They endured the trials of a broken foster care system, overcame threats that tried to silence them, and fought relentlessly for justice. By saving one child, Mr. Rowan learned to forgive himself for not saving his brother, honoring that memory by ensuring Jamie grew up surrounded by love and support. In turn, Jamie dedicated his life to breaking the cycle of neglect that once entrapped him, shining a guiding light for vulnerable children everywhere. Their bond and their achievements affirmed a timeless truth. One act of courage can echo across years, even generations, lighting the way out of the shadows of abuse. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.